Welcome, my trailblazers, to our weekly DigiPath Digest, which is our abstract review journal club of what's happening in digital pathology, what was published since last week. It's based on PubMed alerts of papers about digital pathology and medical AI.
Learn about the newest digital pathology trends in science and industry. Meet the most interesting people in the niche and gain insights relevant to your own projects. Here is where pathology meets computer science. You are listening to the Digital Pathology Podcast with your host, Dr. Alexandra Zhurov.
Couple of updates before we jump into the papers. So, the book, right? There is a book, Digital Pathology 1-on-1, that you can download for free as PDF. So what's happening with the book? I've been talking about updating the book for a long time now, and now we're at the end of April. And let me tell you, the text is already updated. There are also images inside that I still need to work on, but the text is already updated. And hopefully by next week, you will be able to download the PDF. Currently, the PDF is of the previous book, but if you download the previous book, meaning the first edition, this is the first edition, and we're going to have the second edition. If you download the first edition, you will automatically get the PDF of the second one. So if you're not on the list, if you don't have the book yet, Digital Pathology 1-on-1, all you need to know to start and continue your digital pathology journey, there's a code for you on the screen. And we are actually getting so close to the second edition, which is going to be so good because so much has happened in the AI space specifically that changed since the first edition. So that's the first thing. And another thing is my team and I made the strategic decision to release the AI paper summaries to the public. So take it from behind a paywall. It was supposed to be it was for some time a paid subscription, and some of you believed in this and decided this is useful enough to actually subscribe. So thank you for that. I'll send separate emails to you. But so what are the AI paper summaries? AI paper summaries are, as the name says, summaries of the full papers that we're discussing now, the abstracts generated with AI. What I'm going to do, the only thing standing between me and releasing these AI episodes is me recording an intro for them so that people have context. Those who have not subscribed have context why there is an AI generated summary on the podcast feed. But basically, we decided it's more valuable. Like, it's a lot of hassle to access them because they're not available on your normal podcast feeds. You have to subscribe and pay, and it just wasn't worth it. I decided that it's better for you to have the value, and the main value of these AI summaries is time saving. Oh my goodness, you don't even know how much time they save when you don't have the time to read papers. So the AI paper summaries are going to be released, which is exciting. Let me know if you're excited. So let's start with our first paper, which is developing a deep learning-based tool for coronary artery development of deep learning-based tool for coronary artery stenosis evaluation in forensic autopsies using whole slide imaging. This was an interesting paper. It is International Journal of Legal Medicine, which is one of the things that makes it interesting because it's not specifically like pathology journal, and we're going to have our pathology journals as well, but it's from legal medicine. And I had a glimpse into how legal approaches pathology and in general medical expert reviews. When I had a guest on the podcast, I had a lawyer on the podcast, and maybe in the show notes I'm going to give you the link to this episode where they said how cumbersome it is to work with glass slides. And now we have this for coronary artery stenosis evaluation. So let's see what happened here. Cardiovascular disease is a leading cause of mortality, with coronary artery disease accounting for 60% of case in adults. 60% is coronary artery disease. And the quantification of the stenosis in forensic autopsies is crucial for determining causality between pathological findings and death. but it is hindered by subjective visual assessment and inter-observer variability, which is always the case when we have human observers, right? So that's one of the reasons why we developed these AI tools. So this particular study wanted to develop an AI tool using whole slide images for objective stenosis measurement in forensic investigations. So what did they have? They had 98 anonymized H&E stained autopsy slides, 234 coronary sections. Then they had 103 high-quality region of interest, and they split it into training and validation, and also test data set, which is like the classical way how you should be developing these models. But let's see if they're going to be telling us some details. No, let's go through the abstracts, and then I have the images here as well. So they had annotations delineated with data augmentation, weighted cross-entropy loss, Adam W optimization, and so basically like a lot of machine learning, deep learning, things that you need to do to actually develop a good model. And let's check what the validation results looked like. So agreement with ground truth was excellent. So this is great. And on the test set, accuracy improved and it outperforms the pathologist's visual estimates. And the important thing, the total inference time was 199 seconds for 7 cases. So it was just 28.44 seconds per image. So this is huge because it's super fast, actually. And what they say is whole slide image-based transformer pipeline enables rapid, auditable, and reproducible coronary stenosis measurement, reducing inter-observer variability and supporting standardized interpretation in forensic investigation. I don't think this abstract actually does this paper a justice because, and let's see if we can maybe get some information from the image here. Yes, I love this because they did like how this annotation and everything looked like. So first of all, I don't know what I wanted to say. I had a thought. That's a good image. So, okay, so here, annotating process of a coronary with actual stenosis 74.15%. So the stenosis, so I know what I wanted to say. That, okay, when you have this acute cardiac death or an infarction, you are expecting to see changes in the heart. But the changes in the heart only appear after, so what's happening, there is a lack of blood flow to the heart muscle, and then you have changes in the heart muscle when there is a heart attack. It's ischemia, lack of oxygen, and the muscles die. But if it's like super acute, you can only see the changes may still in the heart muscle may still not be visible. And this is when they are checking if there was actually a stenosis, and if there was a stenosis of 70% or greater, then it is considered enough evidence to actually say, yes, this was the likely cause of death. And I'm not a witness in this case, and they probably brief witnesses how to speak about it and how to qualify this. But basically the message here, okay, 70% or more, even without cardiac changes, could be a likely cause of death. And so here is already a problem, right? 70% visually, how are you going to do this? What are you going to do? You're going to guesstimate. And that's basically what pathologists did. And in this paper, they show how big the discrepancies between the pathologists were. And they were bigger than the normal 70% agreement or 30% disagreement that we are expecting, right? If you would like the AI summary of this particular paper, and they developed this model, and the model was super accurate and also defensible in court. At the end of this paper, they're saying, hey, how is now the visual assessment of this going to be defensible if you have an AI tool that is actually accurate, matches or exceeds the ground truth of pathologists? So we are entering for me, this is an interesting time where now it is not justifiable anymore to not use a tool in a case like this. So if this is something you're interested in having as an AI summary, let me know. And I like this. I already have all the AI summaries. It's now up to you which ones are going to end up on the feed. So if that's interesting to you, let me know. And we're going to move on to our next paper, integration of AI-powered digital pathology with case-based teaching and novel paradigm for renal education in medical school. Let me tell you a story about this. Not about this paper, but in general about using whole slide images for medical education. So I was doing my PhD and residency in Germany. I'm from Poland and I studied in Poland, on glass slides, classical way. And in Germany, we also would teach on glass slides. But in addition to that, they developed this whole slide image portal with annotations for histology. I think definitely for histopathology. I saw the version for histopathology where they had all the lesions of all the different changes that the students were supposed to learn in pathology annotated. I was so jealous. I was like, why didn't I have this as a student? I was like really, literally jealous that the students had access to this and I didn't when I was learning. And then I thought like, well, I have access to it now. Why don't I just go through it? Which is what I did. So that's how AI can power education, right? So let's see what they say here. Integrating AI-powered digital pathology with case-based teaching and novel paradigm for renal education in medical school. So medical students, veterinary students, any kind of healthcare-related thing that teaches anything on glass slides, they struggle with understanding different things, including renal pathology. And traditional teaching approaches that rely on the didactic lectures and static microscopy images frequently fail. Yes, they do. What I remember also learning histology, where we would get these box of slides and then we would draw them like we were actually obligated to buy colored pencils and draw them, and the professor would sign off on our drawings. But basically it was not really based on understanding, it was based on learning these slides by heart, because we knew that then one of these slides is going to be on the exam and then we will have to talk about what histology that is and describe this tissue. But it definitely was not based on understanding, it was very much based on memorization, which we did very well. But I suspect anybody who did not end up in pathology already forgot all these tissue architectures. So here, what they're proposing, concurrently case-based learning and flipped classroom strategies are gaining traction for fostering active, clinically relevant learning. So in this paper, they discuss how AI-assisted whole slide imaging platforms can support interactive exploration of renal lesions and simulate diagnostic reasoning. They also present conceptual framework for a case-based flipped classroom approach that leverages annotated slides, clinical cases, and active discussions. And this hybrid model has the potential to improve student engagement, diagnostic accuracy, and readiness for modern digital pathology practice, while also allowing with competency-based medical education principles. And honestly, I did love this hybrid model that we did in Berlin, because people came prepared to class. So they had the access to the virtual version online. They had to like do homework, actually like do some tests. So they had to do it. It wasn't really optional. And then they would sit on the microscopes and us as assistants would go around and help them find the different features, find different cells on the microscope. So, there was the microscopy component hands-on, but they had the virtual option as well. And the case-based learning is also not really something super new, because I remember learning dermatology like that. So here we have renal pathology, but I remember dermatology like that, where it was like this diagnostic case-based workflow where you had a patient presenting with something and then you had to make a decision if it was the right decision a good thing happened. If it was the bad decision, then it was worsening. So then you had to make another decision to like reverse your decision. At some point, you would get the microscopic images of what was there, and you were able to diagnose on that. And I really remember this as the most impactful learning experience that was reasoning based, like diagnostic way of thinking was introduced for the first time. And this thing I did in Spain when I was doing my Erasmus exchange in Europe. You have these exchange programs for students where you can go and study abroad for a semester or 2 semesters. I went for 2 semesters to Spain, and that's where I got introduced to the case-based learning. And I'm glad this is happening in the medical field as well. So the other ones are not marked because of some technical difficulties that I had today. So bear with me. But I did listen to, and of course, if you're interested in detail how the renal pathology is taught in this hybrid model, give me a comment in the chat that you want the second paper as an AI summary as well. So let's do this one. Application of an open source AI tool for quantitative quality control in whole slide images and prostate needle core biopsies, a retrospective study. So this study talks about kind of a trend in medical AI, and the trend is quality control. For the longest time, and it's still important, the trend was like diagnostic support, computer-aided diagnostic, showing the pathologists where they are supposed to look. They already know where they're supposed to look, but you know who hates looking at stuff that is super boring? And I would hate the same thing too. The histotechnicians who are now in the digital pathology implementation time, tasked with manual QC. Oh my goodness. Can you imagine? Just imagine, or maybe you are a histotechnician listening to this. Imagine, I don't know how many cases I'm going to give you my example from my work. So let's say I have a study that has 1,000 cases. 1,000 slides. And manual quality control. The person, so there are 2 steps of quality control. The first step is actually when you're making the slide, checking that everything is there, no faults, and that it's a diagnostic slide. And then you scan the slide. And you can you are introducing a new source of variables because you're creating a digital image from the glass slide. So what can happen? It can be blurry. The folds, if they were excessive, they were probably detected, but some are not detected, right? What else can happen? Mostly out of focus and some histology processing like folds, torn tissue or whatever, right? And now you go on the screen and can look at them for 8 hours. I would quit like within a week. And the thing is that people are quitting basically, or some labs are not going digital because they are facing the threat of these people who are so valuable to the whole histology process, not just like this digitization piece, which I love very much, but it's just one piece of the workflow. They like, please, who would want to do that? So the trend is, or like the new application of digital pathology is quality control. And that's what they did here in this case. They did it for prostate needle core biopsies, right? And this was a retrospective study. Where was it published? Do you have it? I think it's Journal of Histotechnology. But the quality of whole slide images is a determining factor for proper diagnosis and prognosis. And for enhanced performance of digital and computational pathology, and this is crucial, especially if you want to like run algorithms or on these slides, they should be as artifact-free as possible. So now, in the context where diagnoses are increasingly quantitative, well, that's a statement I would argue. Some are not. I see this quantitative trend more in the biomarker discovery space than actually diagnostic space. But let's assume that's the case. And sorry, nobody's telling me that I have the small text. Guys, you cannot read this when it's so small. Let me know in the chat. Okay, so if you want to do something with these digital images in terms of AI, automated, precise, effective, and rapid quality control is of paramount importance. And the nice thing here is that they developed a tool, PathProfiler. This is deep learning based software trained on prostatic tissue that provides a usability score of whole slide imaging, evaluating its suitability for diagnosis. So they develop some kind of score and they describe what the score is. But this PathProfiler is open source, if I understand correctly. Do we have it? Yes, yes. Why did I not highlight this? Let's do it a different color. Open source AI tool. So no excuses. Again, like the court said in the first paper, no excuses, no more guesstimation. Here, no excuses for those who say, hey, well, we don't have money for QC software. Now you don't need money because open source is, you can download it for free. So here, what they did at the Centro de Anatomía Patológica Germano de Sousa, they have 2,500 prostate biopsies a year, and they are distributed to pathologists remotely. So this is also an important fact that, hey, digital supports remote work for pathologists, which is not just nice to have for pathologists. If you prefer working remotely, after I don't know how many years of working remotely, I still wouldn't change it for anything, but every now and then I need to go to a coffee shop to focus better on whatever cognitive tasks. I don't read slides at the coffee shop, but I do write things, write pieces, and work on like written pieces. Anyway, so, but what I'm getting at is remote, meaning digital powers remote. Why do we need remote for pathology and probably for other medical specialties as well? Is because there's a shortage of specialists. So you want to tap into the pool of global resources, right? Okay, so it was crucial to investigate PathProfiler's viability for automated and quantitative whole slide image quality control and its monitoring for diagnostic purposes. And what they did in the last 3 months of 2024, they used these 226 H&E whole slide images from prostate needle core biopsies, where they were retrospectively analyzed by PathProfiler, and they had this usability score, focus, and H&E quality was registered numerically. What they also say in the full paper, I don't know if they tell it to us in the abstract, is that usually, so whenever there is like a scanning artifact problem with the slide that comes from the scanner, usually it's blur, but you can have other things, but then you have to rescan it, right? If not, remake the slide, like recut it. But if it just comes from the scanner, you rescan it, and you want to keep your rescan rate under 5%, right? So if it's over 5%, you have a problem with the scanner or with whatever, right? They want to keep it under 5%. But oh my goodness, if you have to look at it like visually without an assisted tool. Anyway, and here we have a list of artifacts. The artifacts such as mounting media, dust, and folded tissue were the major artifacts detected. So that's these are the classics, right? A combination of, but they don't say anything about blurry, but blurry as well. And then they also had extra prostatic tissue was recognized as other artifacts, which is not really an artifact per se, but what they used it as a proxy for checking the quality of the surgery. Because, so let's see what they say here. PathProfiler is a valuable tool in the automatic quality control of prostate biopsies, allowing quick evaluation and identification of cases requiring review before being handed over to a pathologist, and promotes recognition of opportunities to improve laboratory and clinical quality. They actually don't say it in the abstract, but because I listened to the AI paper summary, was that, okay, there was extra prostatic tissue, meaning it came from somewhere, it came from the surgery, right? So they also used it as a proxy metric for the quality of the surgery. And now we have another interesting one. What do we have here? Okay, so this is a novel way of approaching things when it comes to diagnostics, because we are talking about deep learning based breast cancer stage prediction from H&E stained whole slide images in resource constrained settings. Yes, the title doesn't tell us too much about it. It just tells us that we can predict it and we can apply it in research constrained settings, but the methodology is pretty different from what I have seen so far. So let's have a look. We know that AI shows promise for evaluating primary breast cancer, including nodal status and molecular subtype. We know that AI, there's models being developed that can predict molecular status from the H&E, and nothing yet in routine diagnostics, but this is also a trend that could potentially benefit low resource places, low resource environments, because molecular testing is more expensive than the computation that goes into this molecular prediction. Let's just park the discussion. Okay, you would need digital infrastructure for this, but there are also approaches being developed on static images, and people are working on it, right? And here they present resource-aware deep learning pipeline that combines a vision transformer feature extractor with an annotation-based multiple instance learning aggregator to predict pathological tumor node metastasis stage from hematoxylin and eosine whole slide images. Nothing crazy here. Good combination of methods, right? We have a vision transformer being leveraged. So this is a newer architecture. New, I don't say new because it probably started coming out. Well, they probably worked on it before I published the book. I don't have it described in the first edition from 2023. Let me just put the book code for you on the screen one more time. Let me give you the QR code for the book, whoever does not have the book yet. But why am I showing the book? Because it has the date 2023. The next edition is going to be 2026. It will have vision transformers. So new edition will have vision transformers. And what they did in this particular paper, they have a vision transformer. They have with an attention-based multiple instance learning aggregator to predict tumor node metastasis. So multiple instance learning was also an interesting architecture that powered the, believe Page AI initial prostate algorithm. And in the AI-powered summary, they also explain how this all works. So if you're interested, so the AI-powered summaries are pretty good for understanding the methods underlying these computer vision models, right? So it's going to tell you how a transformer works in contrast to multiple instance learning, how they make these models, these methods combined. So if you're interested in that, let me know in the chat. This paper is actually interesting. So they have these methods, right? Methods are cutting edge, but actually not new anymore. What is new is that they operate at, look at this, 2.5 magnification. Like, what kind of malignancy cytologic cell features are you going to see at 2.5 magnification? Not too many. But because this is well below the 20 to 40x typically used in computational pathology, and originally it was 20x, now 40x, or a combination of these, depending like what validation studies you ran, but definitely not like, oh, just use your 2.5x for diagnostics. But that's what they did, and that is where the resource saving component comes into play. So here, let's see. For feature extraction, they evaluated 3 backbones. The UniFoundation model, so another new thing, foundation model, fine-tuned on the breast carcinoma subtyping BRACS dataset. So we have foundation model that, what is a foundation model? A model that, for pathology in this case, that already recognizes some features, understands the image. So it could, like, for example, if it was recreating parts of the image, it would be able to recreate the correct part in the of the image. So for example, if you would give it cardiac muscle missing a patch, it wouldn't put fat tissue in there, right? It would put, if it was supposed to like finish the drawing, it would put the correct texture there. So it like understands, obviously in quotation marks, what the tissue architecture is, the underlying components. Maybe it can already like understand not only like the edges and the normal visual features of an image, but also the pathology specific. For a particular use case, in this case, breast cancer subtyping, it was fine-tuned on a breast cancer dataset, and they also used a third one, which is a ResNet 50 tuned on the same the same dataset. And ResNet is a deep learning architecture, an older architecture that still performing well. Deep learning works pretty well for different pathology tasks. And the embeddings from the best performing uni fine-tune network were used as input for the multiple instance learning model. So here, this is where the vision transformer powered MIL, multiple instance learning, comes into play, because so the multiple instance learning, my pathologist understanding of this is, right, like you divide the image into a bunch of patches and then like try to predict which one is important, and it works, but it's not that efficient. And here, this foundation model is actually telling the multiple instance learning model, hey, I already like went through these patches and I understand the tissue enough to tell you that this patch is more important than the other patch. So here, take my information, the importance of the patches for diagnosis. Here you have this additional information and go work faster. And this is also where the resource savings comes into play. And the performance was assessed on 3 test sets: internal hold from the Semmelweis cohort, 82 whole slide images from 72 patients. Then they also had the curated subset of the Nightingale high-risk breast cancer prediction data sets, a bunch of slides, 9,489 whole slide images from almost 600 patients. And we have the hero of many papers, TCGA, BRCA data set, and this was 731 whole slide images and 678 patients, and they will all so let's not forget, we're still operating at the 2.5x, not at 40x. So the pipeline achieved area under the receiver operating characteristic curves values of 0.663, 0.672, and 0.632, which 0.5 is a random, like coin toss, and 1 is perfect. So we are well above 0.5. So these different numbers were for the different data sets, and they definitely acknowledge that operating at 2.x may limit access to fine cellular cues. Their results indicate that stage-relevant information can still be captured at this resolution. This study provides a transparent, compute-efficient whole slide image only baseline for PTNM stage prediction from whole slide images, supporting feasibility in resource-constrained environments. So it's sad but true that, hey, 0.66 or even 0.67, you would want more for diagnostics. But then if you have nothing, you're going to take this over nothing. And this is it's sad, but it's true. It's the same kind of principle with molecular prediction from H&E. It's a prediction. You predict something. It's not like 100% we did PCR or next gene sequencing or whatever other method, and we like amplified your gene and this is what it is. But if you don't have access to that, you're probably going to choose access to something that rather than access to nothing. And that's why the caveat resource constraint, but also like in which way other than just leveraging all these different new methods together to make them even more efficient, this option to do it at 2.5x slides means that you can have a whole slide scanner that only scans and at this magnification, right? So that drastically reduces the cost, increases the speed of acquiring these images, and that's what makes the resource requirements a lot lower. If you don't have the book yet, get it right now, my friends. Get the book. The PDF is free. You're going to get it automatically. When you check the code, you're going to be taken to a page where you have to give me your email address, and then you will get emails from me. So be prepared for that. But you can unsubscribe anytime as well. Just get the book and read it. But if you're here, you probably want to show up more times. And hopefully next week, let's make it a challenge for me. I don't know how many of these challenges I already did, but let me tell you, even if I didn't fulfill the whole challenge, didn't meet whatever the goal was, I did get closer to the goal of updating Digital Pathology 101 and including all the new AI information for you in an accessible, clear language, clear format. If you're just starting in digital pathology, or if you have expertise in one area of digital pathology but would like to learn about different aspects of digital pathology, this book is for you. And thank you so much for joining me. If you're watching the recording, vote for which paper you would like to have as an AI-powered summary. And if you have no idea what these summaries are, and if you would like to listen to them, I'm going to release a bunch of them today in the podcast feed, the Digital Pathology Podcast. You just Google that. If you're not listening yet, have a listen and see if it resonates. And if it does, then I hope to see you next time. Thank you so much, and I talk to you in the next episode.